Indian philosophy refers to the philosophical traditions of the Indian subcontinent. Since medieval India, schools of Indian philosophical thought have been classified by the Brahmanical tradition as either orthodox or non-orthodox, āstika or nāstika, depending on whether they regard the Vedas as an infallible source of knowledge. There are 6 schools of orthodox Hindu philosophy or Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, Yoga, Mīmāṃsā the first Florence and Vedanta and 3 heterodox schools Jain, Buddhist and Cārvāka. However, there are other methods of classification. Vidyaranya for instance identifies 16 schools of Indian philosophy by including those that belong to the Śaiva and Raseśvara traditions. The main schools of Indian philosophy were formalized chiefly between 1000 BCE to the early centuries of the Common Era. According to philosopher Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, the earliest of these, which date back to the composition of the Upanishads in the later Vedic period, constitute the earliest philosophical compositions of the world. Competition and integration between the various schools was intense during their formative years, especially between 800 BCE and 200 CE. Some schools like Jainism, Buddhism, Śaiva and Advaita Vedanta survived, but others, like Samkhya and Ājīvika, did not. They were either assimilated or went extinct. Subsequent centuries produced commentaries and reformulations continuing up to as late as the 20th century by Sri Aurobindo and Prabhupāda among others. For Indian philosophers of antiquity, philosophy was a practical necessity that needed to be cultivated to understand how life can best be led. It was thus customary for them to explain how their ideas and treatises served human ends. Indian philosophy is distinctive in its application of analytical rigor to metaphysical problems. It goes into very precise detail about the nature of reality, the structure and function of the human psyche, and how the relationship between the two have important implications for human salvation. Sages centered philosophy on the assumption that there is a unitary underlying order in the universe and everything within it. The various schools concentrated on explaining this order and the metaphysical entity at its source. The concept of natural law was the basis for understanding how life on earth should be lived. Common themes: the Indian thinkers of antiquity viewed philosophy as a practical necessity that needed to be cultivated in order to understand how life can best be led. It became a custom for Indian writers to explain at the beginning of philosophical works how it serves human ends. Recent scholarship has shown that there was a great deal of intercourse between Greek and Indian philosophy during the era of Hellenistic expansion. Indian philosophy is distinctive in its application of analytical rigor to metaphysical problems and goes into very precise detail about the nature of reality, the structure and function of the human psyche and how the relationship between the two have important implications for human salvation. Rishis centered philosophy on an assumption that there is a unitary underlying order in the universe which is all-pervasive and omniscient. The efforts by various schools were concentrated on explaining this order and the metaphysical entity at its source. The concept of natural law provided a basis for understanding questions of how life on earth should be lived. The sages urged humans to discern this order and to live their lives in accordance with it. Schools = Hindu philosophy = Many Hindu intellectual traditions were classified during the medieval period of Brahmanic Sanskritic scholasticism into a standard list of 6 orthodox schools, the 6 philosophies, all of which accept the testimony of the Vedas. Samkhya, the enumeration school; Yoga, the school of Patanjali; Nyaya, the school of logic; Vaisheshika, the atomist school; Mīmāṃsā, the tradition of Vedic exegesis, with emphasis on Vedic ritual; and Vedanta, the Upanishadic tradition, with emphasis on Vedic philosophy. These are often coupled into 3 groups for both historical and conceptual reasons: Nyaya Vaisheshika, Samkhya Yoga, and Mīmāṃsā Vedanta. The Vedanta school is further divided into 6 sub-schools. Advaita also includes the concept of Advaita, Vaishishtadvaita, Vaita, Vaitadvaita, Suddhadvaita, and Akintyabheda schools. Besides these schools, Mahadeva Vidyaranya to the first year also includes the following of the aforementioned theistic philosophies based on the Agamas and Tantras: Pasupata, School of Shaivism by Nekulisa, Sava, the Theistic Sankara School, Pratyabhija plus or minus a, the Recognitive School, Raseśvara, the Mercurial School, part of the First Vidyaranya, the Grammarian School. The systems mentioned here are not the only orthodox systems, they are the chief ones, and there are other orthodox schools. These systems accept the authority of Vedas and are regarded as orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy. Besides these, schools that do not accept the authority of the Vedas are categorized by Brahmins as unorthodox systems. Chief among the latter category are Buddhism, Jainism and Cārvāka. Cārvāka is a materialistic and atheistic school of thought and is noteworthy as evidence of a materialistic movement within Hinduism. Jain philosophy Jainism came into formal being after Mahavira synthesized philosophies and promulgations of the ancient Sramana philosophy, during the period around 550 BC, in the region that is present-day Bihar in northern India. This period marked an ideological renaissance, in which the Vedic dominance was challenged by various groups like Jainism and Buddhism. A Jain is a follower of Jainas, spiritual victors, human beings who have rediscovered the Dharma, become fully liberated and taught the spiritual path for the benefit of beings. Jains follow the teachings of 24 special Jainas who are known as Tirthankars. The 24th and most recent Tirthankar, Lord Mahavira, lived in c. 6th century BC, in a period of cultural revolution all over the world. During this period, Socrates was born in Greece, Zoroaster in Iran, Lao-Tse and Confucius in China and Mahavira and Buddha in India. The 23rd Tirthankar of Jains, Lord Parshvanatha is recognized now as a historical person, lived during 872 to 772 BC. Jaina tradition is unanimous in making Rishabha as the first Tirthankar. Jainism is not considered as a part of the Vedic religion, even as there is constitutional ambiguity over its status. Jain Tirthankars find exclusive mention in the Vedas and the Hindu epics. During the Vedantic age, India had two broad philosophical streams of thought, the Shramana philosophical schools, represented by Buddhism, Jainism, and the long-defunct Ājīvika on one hand, and the Brahmana Puranic schools represented by Vedanta, Vaishnava and other movements on the other. Both streams are known to have mutually influenced each other. The Hindu scholar Lokmanya Tilak credited Jainism with influencing Hinduism in the area of the cessation of animal sacrifice in Vedic rituals. Bal Gangadhar Tilak has described Jainism as the originator of Ahimsa and wrote in a letter printed in Bombay Samarcha, Mumbai, December 10, 1904, "In ancient times, innumerable animals were butchered in sacrifices." Evidence in support of this is found in various poetic compositions such as the Meghadutta. But the credit for the disappearance of this terrible massacre from the Brahmanical religion goes to Jainism. Swami Vivekananda also credited Jainism as one of the influencing forces behind Indian culture. One of the main characteristics of Jain belief is the emphasis on the immediate consequences of one's physical and mental behavior. Because Jains believe that everything is in some sense alive with many living beings possessing a soul, great care and awareness is required in going about one's business in the world. Jainism is a religious tradition in which all life is considered to be worthy of respect, and Jain teaching emphasizes this equality of all life, advocating the non-harming of even the smallest creatures. Non-violence is the basis of right view, the condition of right knowledge and the kernel of right conduct in Jainism. Jainism encourages spiritual independence and self-control, which is considered vital for one's spiritual development. The goal, as with other Indian religions, is moksha, which in Jainism is realization of the soul's true nature, a condition of omniscience. Enakantavada is one of the principles of Jainism, positing that reality is perceived differently from different points of view, and that no single point of view is completely true. Jain doctrine states that only Kvalis, those who have infinite knowledge, can know the true answer, and that all others would only know a part of the answer. Enakantavada is related to the Western philosophical doctrine of subjectivism. Buddhist philosophy Buddhist philosophy is a system of thought which started with the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, or Awakened One. From its inception, Buddhism has had a strong philosophical component. Buddhism is founded on elements of the Shramana movement which flowered around 500 BCE, and has had a very strong influence on Hinduism. The Buddha criticized all concepts of metaphysical being and non-being as misleading views caused by reification, and this critique is inextricable from the founding of Buddhism. Buddhism shares many philosophical views with other Indian systems, such as belief in karma, a cause and effect relationship between all that has been done and all that will be done. Events that occur are held to be the direct result of previous events. A major departure from Hindu and Jain philosophy is the Buddhist rejection of a permanent, self-existent soul in favor of anatta and anicca. Jain thinkers rejected this view, opining that if no continuing soul could be accepted, then even the effort to attain any worldly objective would be useless, as the individual acting and the one receiving the consequences would be different. Therefore, the conviction in individuals that the doer is also the reaper of consequences establishes the existence of a continuing soul. Kārvāka philosophy equals. Kārvāka or Lokayata was a philosophy of skepticism and materialism, founded in the Mauryan period. They were extremely critical of other schools of philosophy of the time. Kārvāka deemed Vedas to be tainted by the three faults of untruth, self-contradiction, and tautology. And in contrast to Buddhists and Jains, they mocked the concept of liberation, reincarnation and accumulation of merit or demerit through the performance of certain actions. They believed that, the viewpoint of relinquishing pleasure to avoid pain was the reasoning of fools. Kārvāka thought consciousness was an emanation from the body and it ended with the destruction of the body. They used quotes from Vidyaranya Upanishad to support this claim. Kārvāka denied inference as a means of knowledge and held sensory indulgence as the final objective of life. Kārvāka held the view that invariable concomitance, a theory of Indian logic which refers to the relation between middle term and major term freed from all conditions, could not be ascertained. However, Buddhists refuted this view by proposing that invariable concomitance was easily cognizable from the relation between cause and effect or from the establishment of identity. Modern philosophy. Modern Indian philosophy was developed during British occupation. The philosophers in this era gave contemporary meaning to traditional philosophy. Some of them were Swami Vivekananda, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Keshab Chandra Sen, Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Kirit Joshi, Mayor Pandit Rahul Sankrityayan, M. N. Roy, Subhas Chandra Bose, Indra Sen, Swami Sayajanand Saraswati, Ananda Kumarasamy, and Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan. Panjurang Shastri Athaval, U.G. Krishnamurti, Acharya Ramesh and Krishnananda are other prominent names in contemporary Indian philosophy. Political philosophy, the Arthashastra, attributed to the Mauryan minister Chanakya, is one of the early Indian texts devoted to political philosophy. It is dated to 4th century BCE and discusses ideas of statecraft and economic policy. The political philosophy most closely associated with India is the one of Ahimsa and Satyagraha, popularized by Mahatma Gandhi during the Indian struggle for independence. It was influenced by the Indian Dharmic philosophy, particularly the Buddha, Bhagavad Gita, as well as secular writings of authors such as Leo Tolstoy, Henry David Thoreau and John Ruskin. In turn it influenced the later movements for independence and civil rights, especially those led by Martin Luther King, Jr. and to a lesser extent Nelson Mandela. Influence. In appreciation of complexity of the Indian philosophy, T.S. Eliot wrote that the great philosophers of India make most of the great European philosophers look like schoolboys. Arthur Schopenhauer used Indian philosophy to improve upon Kantian thought. In the preface to his book The World as Will and Representation, Schopenhauer writes that one who has also received and assimilated the sacred primitive Indian wisdom, then he is the best of all prepared to hear what I have to say to him. The 19th-century American philosophical movement Transcendentalism was also influenced by Indian thought. See also: Advaita, Affectionism, Indian logic, Indian religions, M. Hirayana, Svayam Bhagavan. References. Sources. Further reading, apt. Vidyaranya. The Practical Sanskrit-English Dictionary. Delhi, Motilal Banarsidass Publishers. ISBN 81-208-0567-4. CS1 Maintenance, Extra Text, Chatterjee, Satish Chandra. Datta, Taren Ramohan. An Introduction to Indian Philosophy. Calcutta, University of Calcutta. Kohl, E.B. Goff, A.E. The Zavadārsana Samgraha or Review of the Different Systems of Hindu Philosophy, Trubner's Oriental Series. Taylor and Francis. ISBN 978-0-415-24517-3. Flood, Gavin. An Introduction to Hinduism. Cambridge, Cambridge University Press. ISBN 0-521-43878-0. Gandhi, M.K. Nonviolent Resistance. New York, Skokan Books. Jain, Dulashand. Thus Spake Lord Mahavir. Chennai, Sri Ramakrishna Math. ISBN 81-7120-825-8. Michaels, Axel. Hinduism, Past and Present. New York, Princeton University Press. ISBN 0-691-08953-1. Radhakrishnan, S. Indian Philosophy, Volume 1. Muirhead Library of Philosophy. London, George Allen and Unwin Limited. Radhakrishnan, S. Moore, C.A. A Sourcebook in Indian Philosophy. Princeton. ISBN 0-691-01958-4. Stevenson, Leslie. 10 Theories of Human Nature. Oxford University Press. 4th edition. Hirayana, M. Essentials of Indian Philosophy. Motilal Banarsidass. ISBN 978-81-208-1304-5. External links. A History of Indian Philosophy HTML book, a recommended reading guide from the Philosophy Department of University College, London, London Philosophy Study Guide, a Euro-Indian Philosophy, articles at the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Indian Psychology Institute, The Application of Indian Philosophy to Contemporary Issues in Psychology, A History of Indian Philosophy by Surendranath Dasgupta at archive.org, Indian Idealism by Surendranath Dasgupta at archive.org, The Essentials of Indian Philosophy by Professor Misal Hirayana at archive.org, Outlines of Indian Philosophy by Professor Misal Hirayana at archive.org, Indian Philosophy by Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan at archive.org, History of Philosophy, a Euro-Eastern and Western, edited by Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan at archive.org, Indian Schools of Philosophy and Theology.